When rancher Cole Harding opened his barn door that storm-ravaged night in 1882, he expected to find a lost calf, not a battered woman clutching a terrified child, both trembling like hunted rabbits. The woman's whispered plea cut through the thunder. "Sir, just one night. My daughter needs shelter." Cole saw the bruises shadowing her face, the way she positioned herself between him and the girl, ready to take any blow meant for her child. In that moment, he knew. Whoever these strangers were running from, they were running for their lives. Before we begin this journey through the harsh New Mexico territory, where love battles violence and two broken families find unexpected healing, I want to invite you to stay with us until the very end, because what happens when Cole makes his choice will change everything. And please, comment below with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories of courage and second chances travel across this world. The New Mexico territory in 1882 was not kind to the weak. It was a land of jagged mesas and endless sky, where the wind carried both promise and threat in equal measure. The earth cracked under a sun that showed no mercy, and when the rains finally came, they arrived like a biblical reckoning, violent, punishing, transforming dry arroyos into rushing torrents within minutes. Cole Harding knew this land in his bones. He'd carved his ranch from its unforgiving soil 15 years ago, when he'd been young and full of dreams, when Sarah had stood beside him, her hand in his, believing they could build something lasting. The ranch had prospered in its modest way. Cattle grazed on scrubland that Cole had learned to read like a book, knowing where the secret springs bubbled and which valleys held enough grass to sustain a herd through the brutal summers. But prosperity meant little when you came home to a silent house. 3 years. 3 years since consumption had taken Sarah, stealing her breath a little more each day until that final morning when Emma had climbed into bed beside her mama and found only stillness. 3 years, and Cole still couldn't enter their bedroom without feeling the weight of her absence like a stone in his chest. He'd thrown himself into the work. Work didn't require conversation. Work didn't ask questions he couldn't answer. Work didn't look at him with Sarah's eyes the way Emma sometimes did, making him feel like he was failing every single day. Emma, his daughter. 10 years old now, with her mother's dark hair and that same stubborn set to her jaw. She'd grown quiet after Sarah died, trading her childhood laughter for a careful watchfulness that broke Cole's heart more than tears ever could. They moved around each other like ghosts in their own home, speaking only when necessary, each locked in their private grief. The ranch house stood alone against the vast sky, a sturdy structure of adobe and timber that Cole had built with his own hands. It had 4 rooms, more than many had in this territory, and a porch that wrapped around the front, where Sarah used to sit in the evenings, watching the sun paint the mesas gold and crimson. Cole hadn't sat there in 3 years. Couldn't bear to. On this particular November evening, Cole stood in that same spot not by choice but necessity, studying the sky with the practiced eye of a man who'd learned to read weather like prophecy. What he saw made his jaw tighten. "Emma?" he called through the open door. "Storm's coming. Bad one." She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. At 10, she already knew her way around the kitchen better than most grown women, having been forced into that knowledge by tragedy. "Should I bring in extra wood?" "I'll get it. You secure the shutters on the east side. Make sure the latch on the chicken coop is fastened tight." He glanced at her, this serious little girl who should have been playing with dolls instead of preparing for storms. "This one's going to be fierce, sweetheart. The kind that takes roofs if you're not careful." Emma nodded and disappeared back inside. Cole watched the horizon, where clouds were building into towering thunderheads that looked like God's own mountains, dark and menacing. The wind had shifted, carrying that peculiar electric scent that presaged violence. The cattle would be restless tonight, pressed against the canyon walls seeking shelter. He'd checked them an hour ago, made sure none were in the low-lying areas where flash floods could rise in minutes. He spent the next hour securing everything that could be secured, tying down the barn doors, moving tools under cover, checking that the horses were comfortable in their stalls. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Judge, nickered softly as Cole ran a hand down his neck. "Yeah, boy, I know. You don't like these storms any more than I do." By the time he returned to the house, the first drops were falling, fat, heavy drops that hit the earth with audible impacts, each one creating a tiny crater in the dust. Within minutes, those drops became a deluge. Rain hammered the roof like 1,000 fists, and thunder rolled across the sky in waves that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. Cole and Emma ate their supper in near silence, the storm raging outside. She'd made venison stew, Sarah's recipe, and biscuits that were only slightly burned. Cole ate without tasting, his mind on the herd, on the barn roof he'd meant to reinforce but hadn't gotten to, on all the 100 small vulnerabilities that weather like this could exploit. "Papa?" Emma's voice was small, nearly lost in the thunder. He looked up from his plate. "Yes?" "Do you think Mama can see us? From heaven?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He set down his spoon carefully, buying time. I believe she can, sweetheart." "Do you think she's disappointed that we're so sad all the time?" Cole's throat tightened. When had he last told his daughter he loved her? When had he last pulled her close the way Sarah used to? He'd been so locked in his own grief, he'd forgotten Emma was drowning in hers. "Come here," he said softly. She looked surprised, but came around the table. Cole pulled her onto his lap, something he hadn't done in months, and wrapped his arms around her. She felt so small, so fragile. "Your mama loved you more than anything in this world," he said, his voice rough. "She wouldn't be disappointed in you, not ever. And if she could see us, I think she'd want us to find a way to be happy again. I know I haven't been much of a father lately. I'm sorry for that, Emma. I'm so sorry." She buried her face against his chest, and he felt her shoulders shake with silent sobs. They sat like that for a long time, the storm raging outside, holding each other in their shared grief, while the lamplight flickered and cast dancing shadows on the walls. It was nearly 9 o'clock when Cole heard something that made him straighten, his hand instinctively going to the rifle that hung above the mantel. "What is it?" Emma whispered, picking up on his tension. "Thought I heard something. Probably nothing, just the storm." But his instincts said otherwise. Years in this country had taught him to trust those instincts. There it was again. A sound barely audible above the storm's fury, but distinct. A human cry. Cole was on his feet, moving toward the door. "Stay inside," he told Emma. "But Papa," "Inside, I mean it." He grabbed his rifle and the oil lamp from the table, then stepped out onto the porch. The rain hit him like a wall, instantly soaking his shirt. The lamp's glow barely penetrated the darkness and the driving rain, creating a small circle of illumination that seemed pathetically inadequate against the vast black night. "Hello?" he shouted into the storm. "Anyone there?" Lightning split the sky, and in that brief, brilliant flash, Cole saw them. 2 figures, about 50 yards from the house, struggling through mud that had turned the yard into a quagmire. One was an adult, a woman, he realized, half dragging, half carrying a smaller form. As thunder crashed overhead, the woman stumbled and nearly fell. The child, for that's what the smaller figure must be, cried out in fear. Cole didn't hesitate. He set the lamp on the porch rail and plunged into the storm. The mud sucked at his boots with every step, and the rain was so heavy it was like trying to move through a waterfall. "Hold on!" he shouted. "I'm coming!" The woman had regained her feet but was swaying, clearly at the end of her strength. The child clung to her, face buried against the woman's side. Cole reached them and immediately took the child, lifting the small body into his arms. The girl, he could tell now it was a girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, was rigid with fear, her thin dress soaked through. "Can you walk?" he shouted to the woman over the storm's roar. She nodded, but he could see her trembling, could see she was running on nothing but desperation. He shifted the child to one arm and grabbed the woman's elbow with his free hand, practically dragging them both toward the house. Emma had disobeyed him, of course. She stood in the open doorway, holding the lamp high to guide them. Smart girl. Sarah's daughter. They stumbled up onto the porch, and Cole carried the child inside, the woman following. Water streamed off all of them, pooling on Sarah's carefully cleaned floor. But Cole couldn't care less about that right now. In the lamplight, he got his first good look at his unexpected visitors, and what he saw made his jaw tighten with barely suppressed anger. The woman was young, probably not yet 30, with dark blonde hair plastered to her skull and wide, frightened eyes that darted around the room as if seeking escape routes. She was thin in a way that spoke of hunger, not fashion, and her dress, beneath all the mud and rain, was threadbare and patched. But it was the bruises that caught Cole's attention. A purple-yellow contusion spread across her left cheek, and when she moved, she favored her right side in a way that suggested damaged ribs. Her lower lip was split, barely healed. The child was in even worse shape. Pale and shaking, she clung to the woman's skirt with both hands, her eyes huge in her thin face. She couldn't have weighed more than 40 pounds, and her arms showed the telltale signs of rough handling, fingerprint bruises, like someone had grabbed her too hard, too often. Emma stood frozen, staring at the visitors, her eyes wide. "Emma," Cole said gently, "get some blankets, and heat up what's left of the stew." His daughter nodded and hurried toward the bedroom. The woman remained standing, water still dripping from her clothes, her entire body tense as if ready to bolt. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry to intrude. I didn't know where else to go. I just need—" Her voice cracked. "Just one night, please. Just shelter for the night, and we'll be gone by morning." "You're not going anywhere in this storm," Cole said firmly. "And you're hurt." "I'm fine." It was clearly a lie. The way she held herself, the paleness of her face, she was anything but fine. "Ma'am, I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm not going to turn you out into a storm that could kill you both. Now, are you going to tell me your name, or am I going to keep calling you ma'am?" She studied him for a long moment, clearly weighing her options, measuring the risk of honesty against the risk of continued flight. Finally, she spoke. Lydia Marsh. And this is my daughter, Rose." "Cole Harding. That's my daughter, Emma." He gestured toward the fireplace. "You'll catch your death standing there in wet clothes. Emma's bringing blankets. You and Rose can change behind that screen, get warm by the fire." Lydia's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, Cole thought, but of overwhelming relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much. I promise we won't be any trouble. You need to get warm and dry, and your daughter needs food. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." He paused, then asked quietly, "Is someone following you?" The fear that flashed across her face was answer enough. "I see." Cole moved to the window, peering out into the storm-lashed darkness. Nothing moved out there but rain and wind, but that didn't mean no one was coming. "Well, they won't find you tonight. No one could track anything in this weather." Emma returned with an armful of blankets and, Cole noticed with a pang, one of Sarah's old dresses. She must have gotten it from the trunk in his bedroom, where he'd packed away Sarah's things that first terrible week, unable to look at them, but unable to give them away. "Here," Emma said shyly, offering the items to Lydia. "The dress was my mama's. Papa, is it okay?" Cole's throat tightened, but he nodded. "It's okay, sweetheart. Your mama would want to help." Lydia took the dress with trembling hands, her fingers stroking the fabric reverently. "Your mother, is she—" "She died 3 years ago," Emma said simply. "But she was kind, like you seem to be." "Oh, sweetheart," Lydia's voice broke. "I'm so sorry." "Come on," Emma said, taking Rose's hand gently. "Let's get you out of those wet clothes. I'm 10. How old are you?" Rose looked up at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. 6, the girl whispered, her first word since entering the house. 6? I remember being 6. That's a wonderful age. Do you like horses?" As Emma led Rose toward the changing screen, chattering softly about the horses in the barn and how gentle Judge was, Cole caught the look on Lydia's face. Gratitude mixed with something that might have been wonder, as if simple kindness was something she'd forgotten existed. While the women and girls changed behind the screen, Cole busied himself at the stove, heating up the remaining stew and putting a kettle on for tea. He was aware of Lydia's soft voice murmuring to Rose, of Emma's gentle chatter filling the silence this house had held for so long. Something in his chest, some tight knot he'd been carrying for 3 years, began to loosen just slightly. When they emerged, Lydia in Sarah's blue calico dress, too big for her thin frame but clean and dry, and Rose wrapped in a blanket that dragged on the floor, Cole gestured to the table. "Sit, eat." "I can help," Lydia began. You can sit, Cole said firmly. Emma, set out bowls. They sat at the table, an awkward arrangement that somehow felt right despite its strangeness. Cole ladled out generous portions of stew, and he watched as Rose fell upon her food with the desperate hunger of a child who didn't know where her next meal was coming from. Lydia ate more carefully but no less hungrily, though she kept glancing at the door, at the windows, her body tense with wariness. There's plenty, Cole assured her. Eat your fill. You're very kind, Mr. Harding. Just Cole. And it's not kindness, it's human decency. Something you're... He trailed off, not wanting to speak of violence in front of the children, but Lydia understood. My husband, she said quietly, the word heavy with bitterness. Harlan Marsh. Or rather, the man who claimed to be my husband, though I learned too late that the preacher who married us was no preacher at all. Just another one of Harlan's men, dressed up to make it seem legal. Cole's expression hardened. Where is he now? Santa Fe, last I knew, but he'll come looking. Her hand tightened on her spoon. He always does. He considers Rose his property, you see, and me. I'm the vessel that gave him that property. He doesn't like losing what he thinks he owns. The cold, matter-of-fact way she spoke of such horror made Cole's blood boil, but he kept his voice calm. How long have you been running? 3 weeks. We went first to Albuquerque, but I heard he was asking around there. Then to Socorro, but same thing. I thought maybe if we kept moving, stayed ahead of him. She laughed, a hollow sound. Foolish, probably. Harlan has friends everywhere, men who owe him favors or fear him. But I had to try. I couldn't... Her voice broke. I couldn't let her grow up in that house, becoming what he wanted her to be. Emma was staring at Rose with open sympathy, and Cole could see his daughter's mind working, already forming some bond with this frightened little girl. Well, Cole said, tonight you're safe. That's what matters right now. The barn has a good loft, dry with plenty of hay. I'll set you up there with blankets and... No. Lydia's voice was sharp, then she softened it. Please, could we stay in the house? Just tonight? I know it's improper, but I'm afraid, and Rose has nightmares, and... Papa? Emma said suddenly. They could sleep in my room. I don't mind. My bed is big enough for Rose and me, and Lydia could have the cot by the window. Cole hesitated. Having strange women in his house overnight was certainly improper, and in a territory where reputation meant everything, gossip could spread faster than wildfire. But one look at the hope in Lydia's eyes, at the way Rose had begun to lean against Emma, as if already seeking the comfort of that offered friendship, and he knew he couldn't refuse. All right, he said, but just for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out something more suitable. The relief on Lydia's face was profound. Thank you so much. I'll earn our keep, I promise. I can cook, clean, mend, work with horses, whatever you need. I won't be a burden. We'll talk about it tomorrow, Cole said. Right now you both need sleep. As Emma led Rose toward the bedroom, chattering about the quilt her grandmother had made and how soft it was, Lydia lingered at the table. She met Cole's eyes, and he saw in them a depth of gratitude that made him uncomfortable. Mr. Harding, Cole, she said softly, I know what you must think. A woman on the run, showing up at your door with a child and a story. You have no reason to trust me. I trust my instincts, Cole replied. And my instincts say you're telling the truth. They also say that whoever put those bruises on you deserves a reckoning. Please don't, Lydia said urgently. Don't confront him. Don't try to be a hero. Harlan is dangerous. He's killed men for less than looking at him wrong. I don't want your blood on my conscience. And I don't want a woman and child running for their lives on mine. Cole stood, picking up the empty bowls. Get some rest, Lydia. We'll face tomorrow when it comes. She nodded and moved toward the bedroom, then paused in the doorway. Your wife, she said softly. She must have been extraordinary to raise a daughter like Emma. She was, Cole said simply. After Lydia disappeared into the bedroom, Cole stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the storm still raging outside, to the soft murmur of female voices from the bedroom, sounds this house hadn't heard in 3 years. He moved to the window and stared out into the darkness, thinking about the woman and child sleeping under his roof, about the violent man who would come looking for them, about the choice he would have to make when that man arrived. Because Cole had no illusions. Men like the one Lydia described didn't give up on what they considered theirs. Harlan Marsh would come. And when he did, Cole would have to decide how far he was willing to go to protect two strangers who had stumbled into his life on a storm-ravaged night. He touched the rifle above the mantel, checking that it was loaded. Then he poured himself a cup of coffee and settled into the chair by the fire, knowing sleep wouldn't come easy this night. The storm raged on, but inside the house something had shifted. The silence that had been his companion for 3 years had been broken, replaced by something he couldn't quite name yet. Hope, maybe. Or purpose. Or perhaps simply the reminder that life, despite its cruelties, still held the possibility of unexpected grace. In the bedroom, Emma and Rose lay tangled together in sleep, Rose's nightmares held at bay by the warmth of new friendship. And on the cot by the window, Lydia Marsh lay awake, listening to the storm, feeling safe for the first time in years, and daring, just barely daring, to imagine a future that didn't involve running. Outside, the New Mexico night continued its violent symphony, rain and thunder and lightning painting the darkness with sound and fury. But within the sturdy walls of Cole Harding's ranch house, 4 souls, each carrying their own wounds, their own losses, had found a moment of shelter. And sometimes, Cole thought as he sat by the fire, watching the flames dance, that's all Grace was. A moment of shelter in an unforgiving storm. The question was what you did with that moment, whether you sent it back out into the cold or whether you held on to it, nurtured it, gave it a chance to become something more. By morning, the storm would pass. By morning, decisions would need to be made. But for now, for this one night, they were all safe. And that would have to be enough. Dawn broke clear and cold over the ranch, the storm having spent its fury sometime in the small hours. Cole had dozed in his chair by the fire, waking every hour or so to add wood, to listen for sounds that didn't belong. But the night had remained quiet save for the settling creak of the house and the distant lowing of cattle finding their way back from shelter. He rose stiffly as the first light painted the eastern sky pink and gold, his back protesting the night spent in the chair. The house was still silent, the bedroom door closed. He moved quietly to the kitchen, stoking the stove and setting coffee to brew, the familiar ritual grounding him after the strangeness of the previous night. He was standing at the window, watching the sun lift above the mesas, when he heard the soft pad of footsteps behind him. "I'm sorry." Lydia's voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to disturb you." Cole turned. She stood in the doorway wearing the same borrowed dress, her hair hanging loose around her shoulders. In the morning light, the bruises on her face looked even worse, the purple spreading into sickly yellows and greens. But her eyes were clearer than they'd been last night, less wild with fear. "You're not disturbing anything," he said. "Coffee's almost ready." "I should start breakfast. Please, let me help. I meant what I said last night. I won't be a burden." "Lydia, please." There was urgency in her voice now. "I need to do something. I need to feel useful, to earn our keep. I can't just sit idle while you provide for us." Cole studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. There's eggs in the basket by the door, bacon in the larder, flour and lard for biscuits if you're inclined." Relief flooded her face, and she moved past him with purpose, her hands already reaching for the apron hanging on its hook. As she tied it around her waist, Cole noticed how naturally she moved in the kitchen, how her hands knew their work without hesitation. This wasn't a woman playing at domesticity. This was someone who'd cooked 1,000 meals, who knew the weight of a skillet and the feel of dough. They worked in companionable silence, Cole pouring coffee while Lydia cracked eggs into a bowl with practiced efficiency. The domesticity of it struck him. How normal it felt, how right, to have someone else moving through this kitchen that had been his solitary domain for so long. "How long were you married?" Lydia asked quietly, her eyes on the bacon sizzling in the pan. "To your wife, I mean." "I hope that's not too forward." 12 years, Cole said. "Met her in Kansas, brought her out here when this was nothing but sagebrush and dreams. She was 17, brave as any man I've ever known, agreeing to come out to this territory. She must have loved you very much." "I hope she did. I know I loved her enough for both of us." He paused, surprised at himself. He hadn't spoken about Sarah to anyone in years, had kept his grief locked tight behind his ribs. But something about this quiet morning, about Lydia's gentle presence, loosened his tongue. "Emma looks like her. Same dark hair, same stubbornness. Sometimes I look at my daughter, and it's like seeing Sarah again, and I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse." Lydia turned from the stove, her eyes soft with understanding. "It's both. That's what love is. Blessing and curse tangled together so tight you can't separate them." Before Cole could respond, the bedroom door opened and Emma emerged, Rose trailing behind her like a shadow. The little girl had been dressed in one of Emma's old nightgowns, and her hair had been carefully braided. She still looked pale and frightened, but there was something different in her eyes this morning, a spark of cautious hope. "Mama!" Rose ran to Lydia, who scooped her up despite her injured ribs, holding her daughter close. "Good morning, baby. Did you sleep well?" Rose nodded against her mother's shoulder. "Emma told me stories about horses and the mountains and a fox who lives in the canyon. That's a true story," Emma said, settling herself at the table. "The fox comes around sometimes, looking for scraps. Mama used to leave bits of food out for him. Papa says I shouldn't because it makes wild things dependent, but I still do sometimes." Cole caught Lydia's eye and saw the warmth there, the gratitude for his daughter's kindness. "I say a lot of things," he admitted. "Emma's got her own mind about most of them." Breakfast was a fuller affair than Cole was accustomed to. Lydia had made fluffy biscuits that reminded him painfully of Sarah's, eggs cooked just right, and bacon that was crispy without being burned. The four of them sat around the table, and though Rose remained mostly silent, Cole noticed how she watched Emma with something approaching adoration, how she mimicked the older girl's movements when reaching for her cup. "What needs doing today?" Lydia asked as they finished eating. "On the ranch, I mean." Cole considered her. "You serious about wanting to help?" "Completely serious. I grew up on a ranch in Texas, before my father died and circumstances changed. I know horses, cattle, how to mend fence and rope a steer if need be. I'm stronger than I look." "Mama can do anything," Rose said softly, the first words she'd volunteered. "Mama fixed Mr. Henderson's wagon wheel once, all by herself." "Did she now?" Cole smiled at the pride in the little girl's voice. "Well, if that's the case, I could use help checking the herd. Storm like last night could be some got themselves into trouble. And there's fence down on the east section that needs mending." "I'll come with you," Lydia said immediately. "Mama, what about me?" Rose's voice trembled with fear at the prospect of separation. "You'll stay here with me," Emma announced. "We'll do the inside chores, gathering eggs, sweeping, maybe some baking if Papa has sugar. Then I'll show you the barn and you can meet Judge properly. Would you like that?" Rose looked to her mother for permission. Lydia knelt down, taking her daughter's small hands in hers. "Would you be all right with that, sweetheart? You'd be safe here with Emma. You'll come back? I promise. I'll be with Mr. Harding the whole time, and we won't go far. If you need me, just ring the bell on the porch, and we'll hear it." Rose nodded slowly, and Emma took her hand with a gentleness that made Cole's chest ache. His daughter had been alone so long, had carried her grief in solitude because he hadn't known how to reach her. Now, watching her with this frightened child, he saw Sarah's compassion shining through, and he wondered if he'd been wrong to lock them both away in silence. An hour later, Cole and Lydia rode out toward the eastern pastures, the morning sun climbing higher in a sky scrubbed clean by the storm. Cole had given Lydia his older saddle horse, a steady mare named Belle, and he'd watched with approval as she'd saddled the horse herself with capable hands, checking the cinch with practiced efficiency. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the creak of leather and the soft thud of hooves on damp earth. The land stretched around them in its stark beauty, red rock mesas rising like ancient fortresses, valleys where grass grew thick in secret places, the distant purple smudge of mountains on the horizon. "It's beautiful," Lydia said finally. "Harsh, but beautiful. Like it doesn't apologize for what it is." "No apologies out here," Cole agreed. "Land demands respect, not permission. Sarah loved it, said it made her feel both small and infinite at the same time." "I understand that, Lydia sat her horse well, moving with the mare's gait in a way that spoke of long familiarity. In Texas, before my father died, I used to ride out at dawn just to watch the light change. Made me feel like I was part of something bigger than myself, bigger than my problems. What happened? After your father died, I mean. If you don't mind my asking. Lydia was quiet for a long moment, and Cole thought perhaps he'd overstepped. But then she spoke, her voice steady despite the pain in the words. My father had debts, gambling debts, though I didn't know it until after he passed. Men came to collect, and when there was no money, they took the ranch. My mother had died when I was young, so there was just me. I was 18, alone, with nothing but the clothes I owned. And that's when you met Harlan. That's when Harlan found me. Her voice turned bitter. He presented himself as a benefactor, a successful businessman who could provide security. I was desperate, scared, and stupid. The wedding was quick, private, which should have been my first warning. By the time I realized what he truly was, it was too late. I was trapped. Cole's jaw tightened. How long? 7 years. 7 years of... She stopped, swallowed hard. Rose came along in the second year. For a while I thought maybe a child would change him. Another foolish hope. If anything, it made things worse. He saw her as his to mold, his to shape into whatever he wanted. And the things he wanted, her voice broke. They'd reached the eastern fence line where Cole could see the damage from the storm. A large cottonwood branch had fallen across 3 sections of fence, snapping the posts clean through. He dismounted, and Lydia followed suit without being asked. Hand me those wire cutters from my saddlebag, Cole said, more to give her a moment to compose herself than because he couldn't reach them himself. They worked together in silence for a while, Cole cutting away the damaged wire while Lydia gathered the broken posts. He could see her evaluating the damage, her eyes sharp and knowing. You'll need new posts here, she said. These are rotted at the base anyway. The storm just finished what time started, and the wire should be replaced entirely on this section. It's stretched too thin, weakened. Cole looked at her with new respect. You do know ranch work. I told you I did. There was a hint of pride in her voice. My father might have been a poor businessman, but he knew the land. He taught me everything, how to read the earth, understand the water, know when cattle are sickening before it shows. I loved that work, loved being useful and capable. With Harlan, I wasn't allowed to be anything but ornamental. He wanted a possession, not a partner. They worked side by side for the next 2 hours, riding the fence line and marking the sections that needed repair. Cole found himself appreciating not just Lydia's knowledge, but her quiet competence, the way she anticipated what needed doing without being told. There was something restful about her presence, something that didn't demand conversation, but welcomed it when it came. Why now? He asked as they paused to water the horses at a small stream. What made you finally run? Lydia's face darkened. 3 weeks ago, I overheard Harlan talking to one of his associates. They were discussing Rose, about how she was getting to an age where she could be useful. The way they talked about my daughter, the things they implied. She closed her eyes. I knew then that if I didn't get her away, if I didn't run right then, I might not get another chance. So that night, I took what little money I'd managed to hide over the years, packed what we could carry, and we left. And he's been hunting you since. He has men everywhere, friends, business associates, people who owe him favors or fear him. We stayed in Albuquerque for 4 days before someone recognized me. Then Socorro, but same thing. Every time I think we're safe, someone sees us, asks questions. The storm last night, we'd been walking for hours, got caught in it miles from anywhere. I saw the light from your house and just hoped you'd be the kind of man who wouldn't turn away a woman and child in a storm. I'm glad you did. The words came out before Cole could think about them, and he meant them more than he'd expected. Hope, I mean. Glad you hoped. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, or understanding. 2 people who'd been broken by life, who'd learned to expect cruelty, finding unexpected gentleness in each other. They rode back toward the ranch house in companionable silence, arriving just before noon to find Emma and Rose in the garden, Rose's laughter ringing out clear and bright as Emma showed her how to scatter corn for the chickens. Mama, look! Rose called out, her whole face transformed by joy. The chickens eat right from my hand! Lydia's eyes filled with tears at the sight of her daughter's happiness, at the sound of laughter she hadn't heard in so long. I see, baby. You're very brave. Emma says they're more scared of me than I am of them, Rose said seriously. Is that true? It's very true, Cole confirmed, dismounting. Everything on this ranch is more scared than scary, once you get to know it. Emma looked up at her father, and he saw something in her expression that he hadn't seen in 3 years, pure, uncomplicated happiness. The careful watchfulness had lifted, replaced by the open joy of a child who'd found a friend. Over the next days, a routine established itself with surprising ease. Lydia rose before dawn to help with breakfast, then worked alongside Cole on the ranch while Emma watched Rose, teaching her about the animals and the land. Lydia proved herself capable beyond question. She could rope, ride, and mend fence as well as any hand Cole had ever hired. More than that, she understood the work in a way that went beyond simple competence. She knew when a cow was about to calve, could read weather signs in the clouds, and had an instinct for water that bordered on uncanny. There's a spring up in that canyon, she said on the third day, pointing to a narrow cleft in the rocks to the north. I'd stake money on it. See how the vegetation changes right there? That's water, close to the surface. Cole had ridden past that canyon 100 times without noticing what she saw immediately. We'll check it tomorrow, he said. If you're right, that would be valuable for the summer months. I'm right, she said with quiet confidence, and he believed her. In the evenings, the four of them gathered around the table for supper, meals that grew more elaborate as Lydia learned the contents of the larder and what she could coax from Cole's small vegetable garden. The conversation flowed easier each night, Rose gradually coming out of her shell, Emma blooming under the attention of having another girl to talk to. One evening, nearly a week after the storm, Emma asked the question Cole had been dreading. Can they stay, Papa? Can Lydia and Rose stay with us? The table went silent. Cole saw the hope in his daughter's eyes, the fear in Lydia's as she waited for his answer. Rose had stopped eating, her small hands clutching her fork like a lifeline. Emma, it's not that simple, Cole began carefully. Why not? Emma's voice held a stubbornness he recognized as Sarah's. They work hard, they help with everything, and Rose is my friend. Why can't they stay? Because people will talk, Cole said. A widowed man with a woman and child living in his house. It's not proper. People in town already gossip about the smallest things. This would give them real ammunition. I don't care what people say, Emma shot back. You should. Your reputation matters, sweetheart. Your mother would. Mama would want us to help people who need help, Emma interrupted, her eyes blazing. You know she would. She always said home wasn't about walls, it was about who you welcomed inside them. Cole felt the truth of those words like a blow. Sarah had said that many times. She'd believed it with her whole heart. Mr. Harding, Lydia said quietly. Emma, please. I know this is complicated. I never meant to impose for this long. Rose and I can move to the barn properly, or find somewhere else. No! Rose's voice was sharp with panic. Mama, no! I don't want to go. Sweetheart, I like it here. I like Emma and Mr. Harding and the chickens and Belle and everything. Please don't make us leave. Tears streamed down the little girl's face, and Emma immediately moved to put an arm around her. Cole felt the weight of 3 pairs of eyes on him, all waiting for his decision. He thought about the past week, about how the house had come alive again, with voices and laughter, about how Emma had transformed back into the child she'd been before Sarah died. He thought about Lydia's capable hands and quiet strength, about Rose's tentative smiles and growing confidence. But he also thought about Harlan Marsh, about the danger that might be coming, about the gossip that could ruin Emma's prospects, about the complexity of the situation he'd be creating. Let me think on it, he said finally. This isn't a decision to make lightly. There are consequences either way. Lydia nodded, understanding in her eyes, but Emma looked mutinous, and Rose's tears continued to fall silently into her plate. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Cole found Lydia on the porch, staring out at the star-scattered sky. He brought 2 cups of coffee and settled into the chair beside her. I'm sorry, she said before he could speak. I didn't mean for this to become so complicated. We should leave, find somewhere else. Where? Cole asked bluntly. Where would you go that would be safer than here? Where Rose wouldn't be terrified, where you wouldn't have to sleep with one eye open. I don't know, Lydia admitted, but I can't ask you to risk everything for us. Your reputation, your daughter's future, maybe even your life if Harlan finds us here. What do you want, Lydia? Not what you think you should want, not what you think is proper. What do you actually want? She was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around the warm cup. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I want to stay. God help me. I want to stay so badly it frightens me. I want Rose to keep laughing the way she has been. I want to wake up in the morning without fear. I want to work beside you and feel useful and capable again. I want... She stopped, swallowed. I want things I have no right to want. And if I said you could stay? What then? She looked at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. You'd be taking on more than you know. Harlan won't give up. He'll come eventually. Let him come. Cole's voice was hard. I've faced down rustlers, hostile tribes, drought, and every hardship this territory can throw at a man. I'm not afraid of your husband. You should be, Lydia said urgently. He's killed people, Cole. He won't hesitate. Neither will I. The words hung between them, cold and certain. I won't let anyone hurt you or Rose. Not while you're under my protection. But the gossip, Emma's reputation? I've been thinking about that. Cole set down his cup and turned to face her. There's a way around it. A way that would make it proper. That would give you and Rose real protection. Legal protection. Lydia went very still. What are you suggesting? Marriage. The word fell between them like a stone. A practical arrangement. You and Rose would have a home, protection, my name. Emma would have companionship, and the ranch would have capable help. It would solve a lot of problems. A marriage of convenience, Lydia said slowly. Exactly. Nothing more than that. Separate rooms, no expectations. Just a legal arrangement that benefits both parties. Lydia studied him in the starlight, her expression unreadable. That's very generous. But Cole, you don't know me. Not really. You've known me a week. I know you're brave. I know you're a good mother. I know you work hard and don't complain. I know my daughter hasn't smiled like she has this week in 3 years. He paused. And I know what it's like to be alone, to feel like you're just going through motions, surviving instead of living. Maybe we could help each other with that. And if Harlan comes, then we deal with it, together, as husband and wife legally. He'd have no claim on you then. Lydia was silent for so long Cole thought she might refuse. Then quietly, You'd do this? Really? Take on someone else's problems? Risk everything you've built? This ranch, this house, it's been empty of life for too long. Maybe that's what Sarah would want. Maybe that's what we all need. He met her eyes. I'm not offering romance, Lydia. I don't know if I have that left in me, but I'm offering partnership, protection, and a home. If that's enough, it's more than enough, she whispered. It's more than I ever hoped for. But are you sure? Truly sure? Cole thought about Emma's laughter, about the way the house felt alive again, about Lydia's quiet competence and Rose's gradual healing. He thought about Sarah, about what she would say if she could see them now, and somehow he knew she'd approve. I'm sure, he said. Question is, are you? Lydia looked out at the dark land, at the stars wheeling overhead in their ancient patterns. Then she turned back to Cole, and in her eyes he saw determination mixed with hope, fear mixed with courage. Yes, she said. Yes, I am. They sat together in the darkness, two broken people agreeing to build something new from their separate pieces, and somewhere in the house behind them, two little girls slept peacefully, not knowing that the next morning would bring news that would change everything. Because tomorrow, Cole would ride to town to arrange for a marriage license and speak with Sheriff Dalton about legal protections. Tomorrow, they would begin building something that looked like a family, even if it started as nothing more than mutual necessity. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own fears, but tonight, For the first time in years, both Cole and Lydia allowed themselves to imagine a future that held more than mere survival. They allowed themselves to hope. And in the quiet New Mexico night, under stars that had witnessed countless human dramas played out on the land below, that hope felt almost like a promise. Cole rode into town at first light, leaving Lydia to manage the ranch with Emma and Rose. The decision had been made, and there was no sense delaying what needed doing. The sooner they made it legal, the sooner Lydia and Rose would have real protection under the law. The town of Redemption sat in a valley between two mesas, a collection of adobe and timber buildings that served the scattered ranches and homesteads for 50 miles in any direction. Cole knew every face here, had done business with most of them, and he knew exactly how fast news traveled through these dusty streets. His first stop was the sheriff's office, a small building near the center of town. Sheriff Jack Dalton sat behind his desk, reviewing wanted posters, his weathered face breaking into a smile when Cole entered. "Cole Harding, haven't seen you in weeks. Thought maybe you'd finally been carried off by one of those dust storms you're always predicting." Dalton stood, extending his hand. Cole shook it firmly. "Need to talk to you, Jack, privately." The sheriff's expression shifted, his lawman's instincts kicking in. He gestured to a chair and closed the door. "What's the trouble?" "Got a woman and child at my place. They showed up during that storm last week, running from someone. The woman's name is Lydia Marsh, and she's got reason to be scared. Her husband, or the man claiming to be her husband, is named Harlan Reeves." Dalton's face went hard. "Harlan Reeves out of Santa Fe? You know him?" "Know of him. Mean son of a bitch with connections to some rough characters. Runs a freight business that everyone suspects is a front for something worse, but nobody's ever been able to prove it. Word is he's killed at least 3 men, but witnesses have a way of disappearing when it comes to testifying." Dalton leaned back in his chair. "What's his connection to this woman?" Cole explained the situation, the false marriage, the abuse, Lydia's escape with Rose, the danger that followed them. Dalton listened without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. "So you're harboring a fugitive," Dalton said when Cole finished. "She's not a fugitive. She's running from a violent man who claims ownership of her and a child. In the eyes of the law, if he can prove marriage, the marriage wasn't legal. The preacher was one of Reeves's men." "Can she prove that?" Dalton asked pointedly. Cole's jaw tightened. "Not easily." "Then you see the problem. If Reeves shows up with documentation claiming she's his wife, claiming the child is his, I'd have to turn them over. My hands would be tied." The sheriff ran a hand through his graying hair. "I don't like it any more than you do, but that's the law." "What if she wasn't his wife anymore? What if she was married to someone else?" Dalton studied Cole for a long moment. "You're thinking of marrying her yourself." "I am." "Cole, you've known this woman a week." "Doesn't change what needs doing." The sheriff stood and paced to the window, looking out at the street. "It's a risk. If Reeves comes here claiming fraud, claiming you conspired to steal his wife, it could get ugly. Men like that don't accept losing gracefully." "I'm not afraid of Harlan Reeves." "Maybe you should be. He's not just mean, Cole. He's connected. He's got money and men who'll do whatever he pays them to do." Dalton turned back. "But I'll tell you this. If you marry that woman legally, and if Reeves shows up here making threats, I'll back you. The law would be on your side then. Marriage trumps whatever claim he thinks he has. That's all I'm asking." "When are you planning this?" "Soon as possible. Today, if I can arrange it." Dalton nodded slowly. "Judge Morrison is in town. He could do it this afternoon if you're serious. You'll need witnesses. I'll stand for you if you want." "I'd appreciate that." "Cole." The sheriff's voice stopped him at the door. "Are you sure about this? You're taking on more than just a wife and child. You're making an enemy of a dangerous man." Cole thought about Emma's laughter, about Lydia's quiet strength, about Rose's frightened eyes slowly learning to trust. "I'm sure, Jack. Some things are worth the risk." The marriage ceremony took place at 4 o'clock that afternoon in Judge Morrison's parlor, a simple affair witnessed by Sheriff Dalton and the judge's wife, Martha. Cole had purchased a simple gold band from the general store, and Lydia wore the same blue calico dress she'd arrived in, Sarah's dress, cleaned and mended. Emma and Rose stood beside them, both girls wearing their Sunday best, their faces glowing with happiness that almost made Cole forget this was meant to be merely practical arrangement. Judge Morrison was a heavy-set man with kind eyes who'd known Cole for years. He'd presided over Cole and Sarah's wedding 12 years ago, and there was understanding in his expression as he opened his Bible. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. His voice was solemn, carrying the weight of tradition. Cole Harding, do you take Lydia Marsh to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Cole looked at Lydia, at this woman he barely knew but was binding his life to, and said clearly, I do. And Lydia Marsh, do you take Cole Harding to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Lydia's voice was steady despite the tears in her eyes. I do. Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, and the judge pronounced them husband and wife. When he said, you may kiss the bride, Cole hesitated, and Lydia did too, both remembering this was supposed to be a practical arrangement. But Emma and Rose were watching with such hopeful expressions that Cole leaned in and pressed a chaste kiss to Lydia's cheek, and she returned it, her hand briefly touching his. Martha Morrison produced a small cake she'd baked for the occasion, and they shared it in the judge's parlor, making polite conversation while the marriage certificate was signed and witnessed. When it was done, Cole carefully folded the document and placed it in his coat pocket. Legal proof that Lydia Marsh was now Lydia Harding, that Rose was now his stepdaughter, that Harlan Reeves had no claim on either of them. They were walking back to the wagon when Sheriff Dalton caught Cole's arm. Word of advice, get them home and stay alert. If Reeves has people watching for them, news of this marriage will reach him fast. He won't take it well. I'm counting on that, Cole said grimly. Better he comes at me directly than keeps hunting them in the shadows. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Emma and Rose sat in the wagon bed, whispering and giggling together, but Cole and Lydia were both lost in their own thoughts. The reality of what they'd done was settling over them like a weight. Thank you, Lydia said finally, breaking the silence. I know this isn't what you wanted. I know this complicates your life, but thank you for giving us a chance. Nothing to thank me for. It was the right thing to do. Was it? She turned to look at him. Or was it the dangerous thing? Jack Dalton is right. Harlan won't let this go. Good. I'm tired of waiting for trouble to find us. At least this way, when it comes, we'll be ready. You don't know what he's capable of, and he doesn't know what I'm capable of. Cole's voice was hard. I've protected this ranch through Indian raids, rustler attacks, and every natural disaster this territory could throw at me. I'm not about to let one mean son of a bitch take what's mine. What's yours? Lydia repeated softly. Is that what we are now? Rose and me? Cole glanced at her, then back at the road. That's what the law says. That's what that ring on your finger means. You're a Harding now, both of you, and I protect what's mine. Something in his voice made Lydia shiver, but not with fear, with something else, something she didn't dare name yet. She touched the ring on her finger, a simple band of gold that represented safety, protection, belonging, things she'd thought she'd never have again. They arrived home as the sun was setting, painting the mesas in shades of crimson and gold. As Cole helped Lydia down from the wagon, they both froze. The front door of the house stood open, though Cole distinctly remembered closing it. And in the yard, 3 horses were tied to the porch rail, horses that didn't belong there. Take the girls to the barn, Cole said quietly, his hand moving to the rifle under the wagon seat. Stay there until I come for you. Cole? Now, Lydia. She didn't argue, just gathered Rose while Emma helped her down from the wagon. Cole watched them hurry toward the barn, then turned his attention to the house. His hand was steady on the rifle as he approached the porch, his senses alert for any sound, any movement. No need for that, friend. A man stepped into the doorway, hands raised to show they were empty. He was tall and lean, with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. We're not here for trouble, just looking for something that belongs to our associate. Then you're trespassing on my property, and you've got about 10 seconds to explain yourself before I start shooting. Cole kept the rifle level, his finger on the trigger. 2 more men emerged from the house, flanking the first. All 3 wore guns. All three had the look of men who knew how to use them. The one in the middle, the leader, studied Cole with calculating eyes. Name's Fletcher. We work for Harlan Reeves. He's missing something. A woman and a little girl. Blonde woman, pretty enough, with a child about 6 years old. Heard tell they might have passed through this area. Haven't seen anyone matching that description, Cole lied smoothly. Fletcher's smile widened, turning cruel. That's funny, because we just talked to a shopkeeper in town who said you got married today, to a woman matching that exact description, with a little girl in tow. Cole's grip tightened on the rifle. My wife's none of your business. Oh, but she is. See, she belongs to Mr. Reeves. That makes her very much our business. She doesn't belong to anyone but herself. And now she's legally married to me, which means whatever claim Reeves thinks he has is void. The law might see it that way, Fletcher agreed. But Mr. Reeves? He sees it different. He sees a woman who stole from him, ran out on a legal marriage, took his child. He wants what's his. The marriage wasn't legal, and the child is her daughter, not his. You got proof of that? Fletcher's eyes glinted with malice. Because Mr. Reeves has documentation saying otherwise. Marriage certificate, birth records, all legal and proper. Can you say the same? Cole's mind raced. Could Reeves have forged documents? Of course he could. With money and connections, a man could create any paper trail he wanted. Get off my land, Cole said coldly. Tell Reeves that Lydia is my wife now, that Rose is my daughter. If he has a problem with that, he can take it up with the law. Oh, he'll take it up with something, all right. Fletcher stepped down from the porch, his men following. But it won't be the law. Mr. Reeves doesn't need badges to get what belongs to him. Is that a threat? That's a promise, friend. You've made a powerful enemy today. Might have been smarter to just hand them over, save yourself a world of hurt. I don't hand over women and children to men who beat them. Something flickered in Fletcher's expression, surprise, maybe, that Cole knew about the abuse. That's between a man and his wife. Not anymore, it isn't. Cole raised the rifle slightly. Now get on your horses and ride out. If I see any of you on my property again, I won't bother with warnings. Fletcher studied him for a long moment, then laughed, a cold, humorless sound. You're a brave man, Harding. Stupid but brave. Mr. Reeves appreciates bravery, makes it more satisfying when he breaks it. The three men mounted their horses, but Fletcher paused before riding out. He'll come for them himself, soon. And when he does, that rifle won't be enough. Nothing will be enough. You should have stayed out of this. They rode off into the gathering darkness, and Cole stood watching until they disappeared from view. Only then did he lower the rifle, his hand shaking slightly from the adrenaline. He'd faced down dangerous men before, but something about Fletcher's cold certainty had chilled him. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. He walked to the barn where he found Lydia standing just inside the door, Rose clutched against her side, Emma gripping her other hand. All three faces were pale with fear. They're gone, Cole said. For now, Lydia whispered, but they'll be back. Harlan will come. Her voice broke. I should leave. I should take Rose and go before... You're not going anywhere. Cole set the rifle aside and took her shoulders gently. You're my wife, Lydia. You and Rose are under my protection. Running won't solve anything. He'd just keep hunting you. But he'll hurt you. He'll hurt Emma. He'll try. Cole's voice was steel. But I'm not some helpless victim, and this isn't my first fight. We're going to stand our ground. Cole, you don't understand what you're up against. Then help me understand. Tell me everything about Harlan Reeves, his habits, his weaknesses, how he thinks. If we're going to fight him, I need to know what we're facing. They spent the evening preparing. Cole sent Emma to the Johnsons' ranch 5 miles south, despite her protests. Mrs. Johnson was a tough frontier woman who'd raised 6 sons and wasn't afraid of trouble, and Cole knew Emma would be safe there. Rose wanted to go with her, but Lydia held firm. She wouldn't be separated from her daughter again. After Emma left, reluctantly, on Belle with promises she'd be sent for. The moment danger passed, Cole and Lydia turned the ranch house into a fortress. They shuttered the windows, moved furniture to create barriers, loaded every weapon Cole owned, and positioned supplies where they could be reached quickly. He'll come with men, Lydia said as they worked. At least 4 or 5, maybe more. He likes to overwhelm, to use numbers to intimidate. But he's not stupid. He'll wait until he thinks he has the advantage. What kind of advantage? He'll watch the house, learn your routines, wait until you're vulnerable. Maybe catch you away from the house, or attack at night when you're sleeping. She paused. And he'll use Rose against me. He knows I'll do anything to protect her. That's why she stays in the house, in the most secure room, and that's why you stay armed. Cole handed her a Colt revolver. You know how to use this? My father taught me. She checked the cylinder with practiced ease, her hands steady. But Cole, I can't promise I won't break if he threatens Rose. I can't. You won't have to. We'll keep her safe. He met her eyes. I promise you that, Lydia. Whatever happens, Rose stays safe. They took turns keeping watch that night, one sleeping while the other sat by the window with a rifle. Cole took the first shift, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Around midnight, Lydia emerged from the bedroom, wrapped in a shawl. Can't sleep? Cole asked. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. I hear his voice. She settled into the chair beside him. 7 years I lived with that fear. 7 years of walking on eggshells, of trying to be invisible, of protecting Rose from his attention. And now you're fighting back. Because I have no choice. Because you gave me no choice. She looked at him. Why are you doing this, Cole? Really? It's more than just helping a stranger. You could have sent us to the law, let them handle it. But instead you married me, made yourself a target. Why? Cole was quiet for a long moment, watching the stars wheel overhead through the window. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful, honest. When Sarah died, something in me died too. I kept going through the motions, working the ranch, raising Emma, but I was just existing, not living. The house was silent. Emma was silent. I was silent. We were ghosts living in an empty place. He turned to look at Lydia. Then you showed up in that storm, and suddenly the house wasn't silent anymore. Emma was laughing again. I was talking again, thinking about something other than just surviving the next day. You and Rose reminded me what it felt like to have a home instead of just a house. That's not a reason to risk your life, isn't it? What's life worth if you're not willing to risk it for something? I spent 3 years playing it safe, locking myself away from anything that could hurt me. And you know what? It hurt anyway. The loneliness hurt. Watching my daughter fade away hurt. At least this way, if I'm going to hurt, it's for a good reason. Lydia reached out and took his hand, and they sat like that in the darkness. Two people who'd been broken by life, holding on to each other against what was coming. 3 days passed in tense waiting. Cole stayed close to the house, venturing out only for essential chores and always armed. Lydia kept Rose inside, teaching her letters and numbers to keep her occupied, but the little girl sensed the fear and grew quiet again, her brief bloom of happiness wilting under the weight of threat. On the 4th morning, Sheriff Dalton rode up with news. Harlan Reeves is in town, showed up yesterday with 8 men, all armed. He's been asking questions, making threats. Cole, this is serious. He's not hiding what he intends. Then let him come. Cole's voice was hard. He will, but not the way you expect. Dalton dismounted, his expression grim. He filed a complaint with Judge Morrison, claiming you kidnapped his wife and child. He's got documents, marriage certificate, birth records for the girl. They look legitimate. They're forgeries. Maybe so, but they're good ones. And without proof they're fake, the judge's hands are tied. Reeves is demanding the law force you to return them. Lydia, who'd been listening from the doorway, went pale. No, he can't. Judge Morrison is stalling, Dalton continued. He knows something's wrong, but legally, if those documents are valid, Reeves has a claim. The judge asked me to bring you all into town tomorrow for a hearing. Let both sides present their case. It's a trap, Lydia said flatly. The moment we leave this house, Harlan will take us. The hearing is just a pretense. Which is why I'm bringing deputies, Dalton said. 4 good men. We'll escort you to town, provide protection during the hearing. If Reeves tries anything, he'll have to go through us. Cole studied his friend. And if the judge rules in Reeves's favor? Then we figure something else out. But at least this way it's legal and above board. Better than waiting here for him to attack. Dalton's expression softened. Cole, I know you're scared, but running or fighting isn't going to solve this. You need the law on your side. That evening, as they prepared for the trip to town, Lydia was nearly paralyzed with fear. Her hands shook as she tried to pack a bag, and she kept checking on Rose obsessively, as if the girl might disappear if she looked away. "He'll take her," she whispered to Cole. "The moment we're in town, the moment there's a chance, he'll take her. Not if I can help it." Cole took the bag from her trembling hands. "Lydia, look at me. Look at me." She raised her eyes to his, and he saw the terror there, the absolute conviction that she was about to lose everything. "We're going to fight this the right way," he said firmly. "With the law, with truth, with witnesses who can attest to who you are and what he did. And if that doesn't work, then yes, we'll fight however we need to, but we give justice a chance first. Justice doesn't work for men like Harlan. It never has." Then maybe it's time that changed. They set out before dawn, Sheriff Dalton and his 4 deputies surrounding the wagon like an honor guard. Cole drove with his rifle across his lap, Lydia beside him with Rose held tight, both of them scanning the landscape for any sign of ambush. The ride to town took 3 hours, and every minute of it was torture. But they arrived without incident, and Dalton escorted them directly to the courthouse, a sturdy adobe building in the center of town. Inside, Judge Morrison's courtroom was already filling with townspeople, curious about the spectacle. Cole saw Harlan Reeves immediately, a tall man with dark hair silvered at the temples, handsome in a cold way, dressed in an expensive suit that spoke of money and power. His eyes locked onto Lydia, and his smile was the smile of a predator who'd cornered his prey. Beside him stood Fletcher and 7 other hard-looking men, all armed despite the courthouse rules. Dalton's hand went to his gun, but the judge raised a hand. "This is a court of law, gentlemen. All weapons will be checked at the door, no exceptions." Reeves made a show of removing his gun belt and handing it to Fletcher, who reluctantly did the same, along with the other men. Cole and Dalton followed suit, though Cole noticed at least 2 of Reeves' men had guns hidden in their boots. The hearing began with Judge Morrison calling for order, his gavel cracking like a gunshot in the tense silence. "We're here to address a dispute regarding the custody and legal status of one Lydia Marsh and her daughter, Rose." "Mr. Reeves, you've filed a complaint. Present your case." Reeves stood, his voice smooth and reasonable. "Your Honor, this is a simple matter. Lydia is my lawfully wedded wife, as evidenced by this marriage certificate, signed and witnessed 4 years ago in Santa Fe. Rose is my daughter, as evidenced by these birth records. 3 weeks ago, my wife took our daughter and fled without cause or provocation. I've been searching for them ever since." He produced documents, and the judge examined them carefully. To Cole's dismay, they looked legitimate. Official seals, proper signatures, everything in order. "Mr. Reeves, Mrs. Marsh claims your marriage was fraudulent, that the officiant was not a legitimate preacher." "She would claim that, Your Honor, now that she's found another man to take care of her. But I assure you, our marriage was legal and binding. As for why she left—" He paused, his expression pained. "My wife has suffered from melancholy and delusion since our daughter's birth. I've tried to get her help, but she refused treatment. I believe her current claims are products of that troubled mind." The courtroom erupted in whispers, and Cole felt Lydia stiffen beside him. The bastard was painting her as insane, unreliable. "That's a lie!" Lydia stood, her voice ringing with fury. "Judge Morrison, I am not insane. I fled because my husband is a violent, cruel man who beat me regularly and threatened my daughter. Look at my face. These bruises are only a few weeks old. Look at Rose's arms. Those are fingerprints from being grabbed too hard." Judge Morrison gestured for her to approach. He examined the fading bruises on her face, then asked Rose to show her arms. The little girl obeyed reluctantly, and the courtroom went silent at the sight of the marks there. "Mr. Reeves, can you explain these injuries?" Reeves's expression was perfectly crafted, concerned but not guilty. "Your Honor, my wife is clumsy, has been since her illness began. She falls frequently. And Rose, children bruise easily. I would never harm either of them. I love them." "He's lying!" Lydia's voice broke. "Every word is a lie." "Mrs. Harding," the judge said gently, "I understand you're upset, but—" "Mrs. Marsh," Reeves interrupted smoothly. "She may have gone through some ceremony with Mr. Harding, but as she was already married to me, that ceremony is invalid. She is still my wife, legally and morally." Cole stood. "Judge, I have our marriage certificate right here, legal and properly witnessed. A marriage to a married woman is bigamy, Mr. Harding. If Mr. Reeves' documents are legitimate, then your marriage is void. The trap was closing. Cole could see it in Reeves' smile, in the way the man's eyes gleamed with triumph. He'd planned this perfectly. Use the law as a weapon, knowing a frontier judge would have no way to verify documents from Santa Fe, knowing that Lydia's word against his documentation would count for nothing. Your Honor, Sheriff Dalton spoke up, I'd like to request a continuance. Time to verify these documents with authorities in Santa Fe to investigate Mr. Reeves' claims properly. How long would that take, Sheriff? Could be weeks, maybe months. Reeves stood again. Your Honor, with respect, I've been separated from my family for nearly a month. Every day my daughter spends with strangers is another day of trauma for her. I request that you return them to my custody immediately while this investigation proceeds. No! Lydia grabbed Rose, who'd begun to cry. You can't give us to him, please. Judge Morrison looked genuinely troubled, his eyes moving from Reeves' confident face to Lydia's terrified one, from the documents before him to the bruises on mother and daughter. This is complicated, he began. Mr. Reeves, your documents appear legitimate, but Mrs. Harding's injuries are concerning. I'm inclined... He never finished the sentence. The courthouse door burst open and 3 men rushed in, guns drawn. But these weren't Reeves' men. They were townspeople, led by Thomas Baker, who owned the general store. Judge, sorry to interrupt, but you need to hear this. All of you need to hear this. Baker gestured, and an older man stepped forward, nervous but determined. That's him, the old man said, pointing at Reeves. That's the man who paid me $50 to forge those documents. I'm a clerk in Santa Fe. He came to me 6 months ago, said he needed marriage and birth certificates that looked official. I didn't ask questions. I needed the money. But when I heard he was using them to claim a woman and child, I couldn't stay silent. The courtroom exploded. Reeves's face went purple with rage, and he lunged for the old man, but Dalton was faster, drawing a hidden revolver and leveling it at Reeves's chest. Don't move, the sheriff said coldly, or I'll drop you where you stand. Reeves froze, then smiled, that cold, terrible smile. This changes nothing. You have no proof that Clerk is telling the truth. It's his word against mine. Actually, Judge Morrison said, his voice hard as stone, it's his word, combined with your documented history of violence. Yes, Mr. Reeves, I sent my own inquiries to Santa Fe when this case first came to my attention. Combined with the physical evidence of abuse, combined with Mrs. Harding's testimony, that's more than enough to invalidate your claim. You can't. I can, and I am. The documents are fraudulent. Your marriage to Mrs. Marsh never existed, and you have no legal claim to either her or the child. Furthermore, I'm ordering your immediate arrest for fraud, for assault, and for attempted kidnapping. Sheriff Dalton, take him into custody. But Reeves wasn't finished. In a move that shocked everyone, he drew a hidden knife from his boot and grabbed Rose, who'd wandered too close in the confusion. The little girl screamed as he held the blade to her throat. Nobody moves! Reeves backed toward the door, dragging Rose with him. Or I'll cut her throat right here. Lydia, you're coming with me, now, or your daughter dies. Time seemed to stop. Lydia stood frozen, her face white with terror. Cole saw Dalton trying to get a clear shot, but couldn't without risking Rose. The courthouse had descended into chaos, people screaming and scrambling for cover. And then Emma appeared in the doorway behind Reeves. She must have slipped away from the Johnsons' ranch, must have ridden hard to town, because she was there, small and fierce, holding Cole's spare revolver with both hands. Let her go, Emma said, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. Let Rose go right now. Reeves laughed. Little girl, you don't even know how to use that. Emma fired. The shot went wide. She wasn't aiming at Reeves, just trying to make him release Rose, but the sound was enough. Reeves flinched, his grip loosening for just a second, and Rose twisted free and dropped to the floor. Dalton didn't hesitate. His shot took Reeves in the shoulder, spinning the man around and sending the knife clattering across the floor. Before Reeves could recover, Cole was on him, rage and fear driving his fists. They crashed into a bench, both men fighting with desperate fury. Cole, no! Lydia screamed. He'll kill you! But Cole had 3 years of grief fueling him. 3 years of failed protection, 3 years of helplessness against death. He wasn't going to fail again. He wasn't going to let this man take what he'd sworn to protect. The fight was brutal and quick. Reeves was skilled, but Cole was fighting for his family. When Reeves pulled another hidden blade, Cole caught his wrist and slammed it against the floor until the weapon fell. When Reeves tried to gouge his eyes, Cole headbutted him, stunning him long enough for Dalton and his deputies to pull them apart. Reeves was dragged to his feet, blood streaming from his nose, his shoulder wound bleeding through his expensive coat. His men, seeing their leader subdued, surrendered without a fight. "It's over," Dalton said, snapping irons onto Reeves's wrists. "Harlan Reeves, you're under arrest, and this time there won't be any witnesses disappearing. Too many people saw what you just did." Reeves stared at Lydia with pure hatred. "This isn't over. I'll get out. I have friends, money, influence. And when you do, you'll be wanted in every territory from here to California," Judge Morrison interrupted. "I'll make sure of that personally. Take him away, Sheriff." As the deputies dragged Reeves from the courtroom, still threatening, still raging, Lydia collapsed to the floor beside Rose, gathering her daughter into her arms and sobbing with relief. Cole dropped to his knees beside them, pulling them both close, while Emma rushed over and threw herself into the embrace. They held each other as the courthouse slowly cleared, as the drama that had held the town transfixed finally ended, as 4 people who'd been fighting for their lives finally allowed themselves to believe they were safe. Judge Morrison approached them gently. "Mrs. Harding, and yes, you are Mrs. Harding, legally and properly. You and your daughter are free. Mr. Reeves will stand trial for multiple crimes, and I'll personally ensure he never threatens you again." Lydia looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me. Thank your husband's courage and your daughter's love." He smiled at Emma. "That was very brave, young lady. Foolish, but brave." Emma just held tighter to Rose, who was crying softly into her shoulder. Later, as they prepared to leave town, Sheriff Dalton pulled Cole aside. "That was close. Too close. If that clerk hadn't shown up, if Emma hadn't been there." "But they did," Cole said quietly. "Sometimes Providence works in mysterious ways, Jack. Sometimes justice actually prevails." "Sometimes," Dalton agreed. "But Cole, Reeves meant what he said. He has connections, and men like him don't forgive. Even from prison, he might cause trouble." "Let him try. He'll find I don't forgive either." They rode home as the sun was setting, the wagon carrying 4 people instead of the 2 it had carried away. Emma sat with Rose, the 2 girls holding hands and whispering together. Cole and Lydia sat in front, not speaking, both processing what had happened, what they'd survived. As the ranch house came into view, Lydia finally spoke. "We're really free. He can't hurt us anymore." "No," Cole agreed. "He can't. I don't know how to thank you. You risked everything. Lydia." He stopped the wagon and turned to face her. "You're my wife. Rose is my daughter. Emma has a sister. We're a family now. Not because the law says so, but because we chose it, because we fought for it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "A family. I never thought I'd have that again." "Neither did I," Cole admitted. "But here we are." They sat there in the fading light, 4 people who'd been broken and lost, who'd found each other in a storm, who'd fought their way through darkness to something that looked remarkably like grace. And as the stars began to appear in the vast New Mexico sky, they finally allowed themselves to hope that the worst was truly over, that tomorrow would bring not fear, but peace. That home was not just a place, but the people you chose to stand beside when the world tried to tear you apart. The weeks following the courthouse confrontation settled over the ranch like a gentle rain after drought. For the first time since that storm-ravaged night when Lydia and Rose had stumbled into their lives, the weight of fear began to lift. Word had spread through the territory about Harlan Reeves' arrest, about the fraud he'd attempted, about the violence he'd shown in open court. Judge Morrison had been true to his word, sending notices to law enforcement across multiple territories, ensuring Reeves would face justice wherever he went. But freedom from fear, Cole was learning, didn't automatically translate to knowing how to live without it. The morning after their return from town, Cole woke early as always and found Lydia already in the kitchen. her hands moving through the familiar motions of preparing breakfast. She wore one of Sarah's dresses. Cole had given her 3 more from the trunk, unable to bear seeing them gather dust when they could serve a living woman, and her hair was pinned up in a practical bun. The bruises on her face had faded to yellow-green shadows, soon to disappear entirely. "You didn't have to get up so early," Cole said, pouring himself coffee. "You should rest after everything." "I can't rest," Lydia admitted, cracking eggs into a bowl with perhaps more force than necessary. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him grabbing Rose, see that knife at her throat. I keep thinking about all the ways it could have gone wrong. But it didn't. Because Emma put herself in danger. Because you fought a man who could have killed you. Because a clerk from Santa Fe happened to grow a conscience at exactly the right moment." Her hand stilled on the bowl. "We survived on luck, Cole. What if our luck had run out?" Cole crossed the kitchen and gently took the bowl from her trembling hands. "It wasn't just luck. It was courage. Yours, mine, Emma's. It was Sheriff Dalton's commitment to justice. It was people in this town who knew something wasn't right and acted on it. That's not luck, Lydia. That's what happens when good people refuse to look away." She turned to face him, and he saw tears tracking down her cheeks. "I'm so tired of being afraid. I'm tired of jumping at shadows, of checking the doors and windows every hour, of holding my breath every time I hear hoofbeats. I want to feel safe. I want Rose to feel safe. But I don't know how to stop being terrified." Without thinking, Cole pulled her into his arms. She stiffened for just a moment, old instincts dying hard, then melted against him, her face pressed to his chest, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He held her there in the quiet kitchen while the sun rose outside, while the coffee grew cold, while the eggs waited in their bowl. He held her and let her cry out 3 weeks of running, 7 years of abuse, a lifetime of learning not to trust. "It takes time," he said quietly into her hair. "After Sarah died, I was afraid too. Afraid to hope, afraid to feel, afraid that if I let myself care about anything, I'd lose it. It took 3 years of living like a ghost before you and Rose showed me I was already losing everything that mattered by being afraid." Lydia pulled back to look at him, her eyes red but clearing. "How did you stop being afraid?" "I haven't stopped completely. I'm still afraid every time Emma climbs that oak tree by the creek. Still afraid every time storm clouds gather. Still afraid I'll fail the people depending on me." He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "But I learned that being afraid and being brave aren't opposites. Brave is being afraid and doing what needs doing anyway. Like marrying a stranger to protect her from a monster. Like leaving everything you know to save your daughter. Like standing up in that courtroom despite knowing he could destroy you. You've been brave every day since I met you, Lydia. The fear doesn't change that." She managed a small smile. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? 2 broken people pretending we know what we're doing." "Maybe that's all anyone ever is." Cole reluctantly released her, stepping back to a more proper distance. The feel of her in his arms had been unexpectedly right, unexpectedly comfortable, and that realization brought its own kind of fear. This was supposed to be a practical arrangement, he reminded himself. Protection and partnership, nothing more. But the way his heart had felt holding her suggested his heart hadn't received that message. The morning routine continued, and soon Emma and Rose emerged from the bedroom, Rose clinging to Emma's hand the way she had those first few days. The trauma of being grabbed by Reeves, of having a knife at her throat, had sent the little girl backward in the progress she'd made. She'd barely spoken since the courthouse, and she refused to leave Emma's side. "Good morning, baby," Lydia said, forcing brightness into her voice. "Did you sleep well?" Rose shook her head mutely, pressing closer to Emma. Emma looked at her father with worried eyes. She had nightmares again, 3 times, about him. "He can't hurt you anymore, sweetheart," Lydia said, kneeling to Rose's level. "He's in jail, locked away where he can never reach you." But Rose just stared at her mother with huge, haunted eyes, and Cole saw in them a truth they all knew but didn't want to acknowledge. Being safe and feeling safe were 2 very different things. After breakfast, while Lydia cleaned up the kitchen, Cole took Emma aside on the porch. "I need to talk to you about what you did in that courthouse." Emma's chin came up defensively. "I saved Rose. You could have been killed. You disobeyed Mrs. Johnson, rode to town alone, and walked into a dangerous situation with a loaded gun. Emma, you're 10 years old." So I should have just let him take Rose? Let him hurt her? You should have trusted the adults to handle it. The adults weren't handling it. Emma's voice rose with frustration. He had a knife to her throat, and everyone was just standing there. Someone had to do something. Cole rubbed his face, torn between pride in his daughter's courage and terror at the risk she'd taken. Emma, I understand why you did it, and I'm grateful. God, I'm so grateful you were there, but you can't take risks like that. You're all I have left of your mother. If something happened to you, I'm not all you have anymore, Emma interrupted quietly. You have Lydia now, and Rose. We're a family, Papa. You said so yourself, and families protect each other. The simple truth of it hit Cole like a physical blow. When had his daughter become so wise? When had she learned to see what he was still struggling to accept? You're right, he said finally. We are a family, which means we all protect each other, together. No more running off alone to play hero. Agreed? Agreed, Emma said. Then, tentatively, Papa, do you love Lydia? The question caught him off guard. It's complicated, sweetheart. Why? Because of Mama? Partly. And because Lydia and I married for practical reasons, to protect her and Rose. Love wasn't part of the agreement. Emma studied him with those two knowing eyes. But do you love her? Cole looked through the window into the kitchen, where Lydia was teaching Rose to knead bread dough, both of them dusted with flour, Lydia's laugh ringing out at something Rose had whispered. His chest tightened with an emotion he wasn't ready to name. I don't know, he admitted. I know I care about her. I know I want to protect her, want her to be happy. I know the house feels more like home with her in it. But whether that's love or just gratitude for the life she's brought back to our home, I can't say. Mama would want you to be happy, Emma said softly. She told me once, before she got really sick, that if anything happened to her, she wanted you to live. Really live. Not just exist. She said love wasn't a limited thing, that your heart could hold more than one person. Cole's throat tightened. Your mama was wise. She was. And she was right. Emma squeezed his hand. It's okay to love Lydia, Papa. It doesn't mean you're forgetting Mama. It just means you're remembering how to be alive. Over the following days, Cole found himself watching Lydia with new awareness. The way she hummed while working in the garden, planting vegetables for the coming season. The way she sat with Rose for hours, reading stories and singing songs until the little girl's nightmares began to ease. The way she moved through the house like she belonged there, not tentative or apologetic, but claiming her space with quiet confidence. He watched her work with the horses, her hands gentle and sure, her voice a soothing murmur that calmed even the most skittish animals. He watched her men fence alongside him, matching him stride for stride despite the heat, never complaining, always capable. He watched her with Emma, treating his daughter not as a burden but as a gift, teaching her things Sarah would have taught her, how to make perfect pie crust, how to braid hair in intricate patterns, how to read the sky for weather. And slowly, reluctantly, he began to acknowledge what Emma had seen immediately. He was falling in love with his wife. The realization terrified him. Loving Lydia meant being vulnerable again, meant risking the kind of devastating loss he'd barely survived with Sarah. It meant crossing the carefully drawn boundaries of their practical arrangement into territory that could complicate everything. It meant potentially being rejected, because nothing in their agreement required Lydia to return his feelings. So he said nothing. He kept his growing feelings locked tight behind his ribs and focused on the work of running the ranch, of building the life they'd claimed together. But Lydia, he was coming to learn, was more perceptive than he'd given her credit for. 3 weeks after the courthouse confrontation, they were working together to bring the cattle down from the higher pastures for spring branding. It was hard work, hot and dusty, requiring long hours in the saddle and constant attention. They'd been at it since dawn, and the sun was past its zenith when Lydia called for a break near a small spring in a cottonwood grove. They dismounted and let the horses drink, then settled in the shade with canteens and the lunch Lydia had packed. For a while they ate in comfortable silence, listening to the cattle settle and the cottonwood leaves whisper overhead. "Cole," Lydia said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." Are you happy with this arrangement, I mean, with me and Rose being here? He looked at her surprised. Why would you ask that? Because you've been different lately, distant, and I wonder if maybe you're regretting taking us in, regretting the marriage. I'd understand if you were. You signed up to help a stranger, not to take on a lifetime commitment to a woman with more problems than assets. Lydia, no. Cole set down his canteen and turned to face her fully. I don't regret it, not for a second. Then why do you keep pulling away? Some mornings you won't even look at me. You leave rooms when I enter them. If I've done something wrong, you haven't done anything wrong. Cole ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself for causing her this doubt. It's not you. It's me, trying to figure out how to navigate this situation. What situation? This marriage, this family we've built, the fact that it's becoming something different than what we agreed to. Lydia went very still. Different how? Cole met her eyes, and the words came before he could stop them. I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know what to do about it. The silence that followed was absolute. A hawk cried overhead, the cattle lowed in the distance, the spring bubbled over stones, but between Cole and Lydia there was only stunned quiet. You're... Lydia's voice was barely a whisper. You're what? I know it wasn't part of our agreement. I know you married me for protection, for Rose's sake. I'm not asking you to feel the same way, He stood, needing to move, needing to do something with the nervous energy flooding his system. I needed to be honest. You asked why I've been distant, and that's why. I was trying not to complicate things, trying not to make you uncomfortable in your own home. Uncomfortable? Lydia laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Cole, do you have any idea how I feel about you? I assumed grateful, maybe, relieved to be safe. Grateful, relieved. She stood too, facing him across the small clearing. You're right. I am those things. But I'm also terrified. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of the fact that somewhere between that storm and today, I started falling in love with you too, and it scares me to death. Now it was Cole's turn to be stunned. You... what? I love you, you impossible man. I love the way you are with Emma, patient and kind even when you're heartbroken. I love the way you welcomed a stranger and her child without hesitation. I love your strength, your integrity, the way you look at the land like it's a living thing you're partnered with. I love how you held me when I was falling apart and didn't try to fix me. Just let me be broken until I was ready to be whole again. She stepped closer, her eyes bright with unshed tears. But I'm afraid, Cole. I was married once before, or thought I was, and it was hell. The idea of opening my heart again, of trusting a man with that power over me, it terrifies me. What if I'm wrong about you? What if this feeling is just gratitude masquerading as love? What if... Cole closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was nothing like the chaste kiss at their wedding. This was real, deep, carrying 3 weeks of suppressed longing and years of loneliness on both sides. Lydia made a small sound of surprise that became a sigh, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, and Cole felt something fundamental shift in his chest, like a key turning in a lock. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lydia pressed her forehead to his. Oh, she whispered. Oh, this is real. Very real, Cole agreed. Lydia, I can't promise I'll never hurt you. I can't promise I'll always know the right thing to say or do. But I can promise I will never ever raise a hand to you in anger. I will never make you feel small or worthless or afraid. I will spend every day trying to deserve the gift of your trust. And I promise to try not to let fear rule me, to try to believe in this, in us, even when it's hard. She pulled back to look at him. We're really doing this? Making this marriage real? If you want to. I want to, she said firmly. I want to so much it almost hurts. But Cole, we need to be honest with each other. About everything. About our fears, our doubts, our past. No more pulling away when things get complicated. Agreed. No more distance. We face things together. They sealed the promise with another kiss, softer this time, filled with tenderness rather than desperation. And when they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. The girls are going to be insufferable about this, Cole said. Emma's been not so subtly pushing us together for weeks. Rose, too. Just this morning she asked me when I was going to kiss you properly because that little peck at the wedding didn't count. Lydia laughed. Out of the mouths of babes. They finished the cattle drive in a completely different mood, stealing glances at each other like teenagers, occasionally reaching out to touch hands as they rode side by side. By the time they headed home that evening, both were exhausted but happier than either had been in years. Emma took one look at them as they dismounted and started grinning. Finally! I thought you two would never figure it out. Figure what out? Cole asked innocently. That you're in love, obviously. Rose, come here. They finally did it. Rose emerged from the house, her face lighting up when she saw her mother's expression. Does this mean Cole is really my papa now? Not just pretend? Lydia looked at Cole, who nodded. Yes, baby. Cole is really your papa now, if that's okay with you? Rose ran to Cole and threw her arms around his waist. It's very okay. I always wanted a papa who was nice. Cole lifted her up, this little girl who'd been so frightened, who was slowly learning to trust again. And I always wanted another daughter. Seems like we're all getting what we wanted. That evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Rose in her own small bed in Emma's room, both girls whispering and giggling about the future, Cole and Lydia sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge. I was thinking, Lydia said, nestled against Cole's side, his arm around her shoulders, we should do it properly. Have a real wedding, I mean. Not just a legal arrangement, but a celebration. Let the town see that this is a real marriage, a real family. You want a public ceremony? After everything with Reeves? Especially after everything with Reeves. I want everyone to know that I chose this, that I chose you, chose this life, chose to stand up and claim my happiness instead of hiding from it. She looked up at him. Unless you think it's too much? I think it's perfect. We'll do it right. Church, witnesses, a proper celebration. Show the whole territory that the Harding family is here to stay. Over the next 2 weeks, preparations for the ceremony consumed the household. Emma and Rose threw themselves into planning with the enthusiasm only children could muster, insisting on picking wildflowers for decorations and practicing walking down the aisle with serious concentration. Mrs. Johnson and several other ranch wives descended on the house with offers of help, bringing fabric for a dress, recipes for celebration foods, and enough goodwill to make Lydia cry more than once. The town of Redemption, it seemed, had taken the story of Lydia and Cole to heart. Here was a tale they could celebrate, a widow and a stranger, both broken, finding healing in each other. It was the kind of story the frontier was built on, the kind that gave people hope that even in this harsh land, love could flourish. Martha Morrison, the judge's wife, took it upon herself to make Lydia a proper wedding dress. Not white. That seemed inappropriate for a second marriage, but a beautiful deep blue that matched Lydia's eyes, with careful embroidery at the collar and cuffs. You're giving me too much, Lydia protested when Martha brought it for a final fitting. I can't possibly repay. Nonsense. You've given this town something it needed, a reminder that we're not just surviving out here, we're building lives. That's worth more than a dress. Martha pinned the hem with practiced efficiency. Besides, Judge Morrison hasn't smiled as much in years as he did after that courthouse business. You gave him a chance to do real justice, not just shuffle papers. Cole, meanwhile, was dealing with his own preparations. He'd asked Sheriff Dalton to stand up with him, and Emma had insisted on being part of the ceremony too, along with Rose. It was unconventional, but then again, everything about their situation was unconventional. The night before the wedding, Cole found Lydia in the barn, checking on a mare that was close to foaling. She stood in the lamplight, one hand on the horse's swollen belly, humming softly. You should be resting, Cole said, joining her in the stall. Tomorrow's a big day. I'm too nervous to rest. What if I trip walking down the aisle? What if I forget the vows? What if you just enjoy it? Cole interrupted gently. This isn't a performance, Lydia. It's a celebration of something that's already real. We're already married, already in love, already a family. Tomorrow is just making it official in front of God and the community. I know, but it feels important, like I'm making a promise not just to you, but to myself. That I deserve this happiness, that I'm worthy of this new life. She leaned into him when he put his arm around her. For 7 years, Harlan told me I was worthless, that no one else would ever want me, that I should be grateful he tolerated me. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my head telling me I'm not good enough. Then let tomorrow be the day you silence that voice forever. Let it be the day you stand in front of everyone and claim the truth, that you're strong, worthy, and loved. Lydia turned in his arms and kissed him softly. Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for teaching me how to live again instead of just existing. They stood together in the warm lamplight, the mare huffing contentedly beside them, and neither needed to say what they were both feeling, that tomorrow would mark not just a wedding, but a new beginning for all of them. The ceremony took place under the massive cottonwood trees that grew along the creek on the eastern boundary of Cole's property. The trees were ancient, their branches spreading wide to create natural cathedral, and someone had strung lanterns in the branches that would glow as evening fell. Nearly the whole town turned out, along with ranchers from the surrounding area. Cole stood at the makeshift altar, a simple wooden platform draped in white cloth, with Emma and Rose on either side of him, both girls wearing new dresses and looking solemn with the importance of their roles. Sheriff Dalton stood beside Cole, looking uncomfortable in his Sunday best, but smiling. "Never thought I'd see the day," he murmured. "Cole Harding in love again." "Neither did I," Cole admitted, "but here we are." The small group of musicians, a fiddle, a guitar, and Mrs. Baker's surprisingly lovely voice began to play, and the gathered crowd turned to watch Lydia walk down the aisle. Cole's breath caught in his throat. She was beautiful, not in the fragile, decorative way Harlan Reeves had demanded, but in a way that spoke of strength and dignity. The blue dress flowed around her as she walked, her head held high, her eyes locked on Cole's. No one led her down the aisle. She walked alone, claiming this choice as her own, and there was power in that independence. When she reached the altar, Cole took her hands, and they turned together to face Reverend Matthews, who'd ridden in from Santa Fe to perform the ceremony. "Dearly beloved," the Reverend began, his voice carrying across the gathered assembly, "we are here today to witness the union of Cole Harding and Lydia Marsh in holy matrimony. This is a union already blessed by law, but today we ask for God's blessing as well, and we ask this community to stand witness and offer their support." He looked at the crowd. "If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined, speak now or forever hold your peace." The silence was absolute. No one would dare object, not after what the town had witnessed in the courthouse. "Very well." Reverend Matthews turned to Cole. "Cole Harding, do you take Lydia to be your wife? Do you promise to love her, honor her, cherish her, in sickness and in health, in plenty and in want, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Cole said clearly, his voice strong. "I promise all of that and more. I promise to see her, to value her, to stand beside her as an equal partner in all things. I promise to protect her, not because she's weak, but because love means shielding each other from the storms. And I promise to build a life with her that honors both our pasts and embraces our future." Lydia's eyes glistened with tears, and her voice trembled slightly when Reverend Matthews turned to her with the same question. "I do," she said. "I promise to trust you with my heart, even though trust doesn't come easy to me anymore. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your confidant. I promise to bring all of myself to this marriage, the broken parts and the healing parts, the fears and the hopes. And I promise to love not just you, but the family we're creating together, with everything I have." The Reverend smiled. "The rings?" Emma stepped forward, presenting 2 simple gold bands on a small cushion. Cole and Lydia had chosen matching rings, symbolic of their equal partnership. Cole slipped the ring onto Lydia's finger. "With this ring, I thee wed." Lydia did the same, her hands steady now. "With this ring, I thee wed." "Then by the power vested in me by God in the territory of New Mexico, I pronounce you husband and wife. Cole, you may kiss your bride." This kiss was different from all the others. It was a promise made public, a claiming done in the sight of witnesses, a declaration that they belonged to each other by choice and by love. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, Emma and Rose jumping up and down with excitement. As they broke apart, both smiling, Reverend Matthews raised his voice over the celebration. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Cole Harding, and their daughters, Emma and Rose. The emphasis on their daughters was intentional, and Lydia squeezed Cole's hand gratefully. This was what she'd wanted, public recognition that Rose was part of this family, that Emma and Rose were sisters, that the four of them were bound together not just by law, but by love. The celebration that followed was everything a frontier wedding should be. Tables laden with food, music, and dancing, laughter and joy. Emma and Rose danced together until they collapsed in giggles, then begged the adults to dance too. Cole hadn't danced since Sarah died, but he swept Lydia into his arms and moved with her across the grass beneath the cottonwoods, both of them laughing at his rusty skills. As the sun set and the lanterns glowed to life in the trees, creating a magical canopy of light, Sheriff Dalton approached them with news that made the celebration complete. "Just got word from Santa Fe," he said. "Harlan Reeves pleaded guilty to all charges. He's going to prison for 15 years minimum, possibly longer. The judge threw the book at him. Fraud, assault, attempted kidnapping, everything. He's done, Lydia. He'll never hurt you or Rose again." Lydia sagged against Cole in relief. "It's really over. Truly over." "It is," Dalton confirmed. "You're free to live your life without looking over your shoulder." As Dalton walked away to join the celebration, Lydia turned in Cole's arms and kissed him deeply, not caring who saw, not hiding her joy or her love or her overwhelming relief. "We did it," she whispered against his lips. "We survived. We won." "We did more than survive," Cole said. "We built something beautiful out of the ashes. We found each other in the darkness and created light." They danced until the stars filled the sky, until Emma and Rose were carried home sleeping by sympathetic neighbors, until the last of the guests departed with promises to visit soon. And when they finally stood alone beneath the cottonwoods, the lanterns burning low, Lydia looked at the life they'd built and felt something she hadn't felt in 7 years. Complete, perfect peace. "Take me home, husband," she said softly. "Gladly, wife." They walked back to the ranch house hand in hand, ready to begin their life together not as strangers bound by necessity, but as partners bound by choice, love, and the unshakable conviction that they were exactly where they belonged. The first light of dawn filtered through the bedroom curtains, painting everything in soft gold, and Cole woke to find Lydia already awake beside him, her head propped on one hand, watching him with a gentle smile. "How long have you been awake?" he murmured, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "A while. I keep thinking I'll wake up and discover this is all a dream, that I'm still running, still afraid, still alone." Her voice was soft but steady. "But then I see you, and I know it's real. We're really here. We're really safe. We're really married," Cole added, pulling her closer. "Properly married now, in every way that matters." They lay together in the quiet morning, neither wanting to break the spell of peace that had settled over them. For the first time in 3 years, Cole felt whole again, not replacing what he'd had with Sarah, but creating something new and equally precious. Different love, but no less real. A soft knock on the door interrupted the moment. "Papa? Lydia?" Emma's voice came through the wood. "Rose and I made breakfast. Well, we tried to make breakfast. You should probably come check before anything catches fire." Cole and Lydia exchanged amused glances and dressed quickly, emerging to find the kitchen in cheerful chaos. Emma stood at the stove, carefully monitoring a pan of eggs that were only slightly burned, while Rose arranged wildflowers in a jar on the table, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "We wanted to surprise you," Emma said, "since it's your first morning as really truly married people." "Consider us surprised," Lydia said, surveying the slightly scorched eggs, lopsided biscuits, and flowers that shed petals across the tablecloth. "And very, very touched." They sat together as a family, eating breakfast that tasted perfect despite its imperfections, and Cole felt something settle in his chest that he hadn't even realized was unsettled. This was what home was supposed to feel like, messy and real and filled with love. "Rose," Cole said gently, "would you like to start calling me Papa? You don't have to if you're not ready, but I'd like it if you did." Rose looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly, then back at Cole. "Will you always be my Papa, even when I'm grown up? Even if—" She trailed off, unable to articulate all the fears still lurking in her young heart. "Even then," Cole promised, "always and forever." You're my daughter now, just as much as Emma is. Nothing will change that." "Then yes," Rose whispered, testing the word. "Papa." The simple syllables seemed to unlock something in the little girl. Over the following days, Rose began to blossom in earnest, her fears gradually receding as she learned to trust the safety surrounding her. She followed Cole around the ranch like a shadow, asking endless questions about the cattle, the horses, the land. She was particularly fascinated by the chickens, spending hours in the coop talking to them in her soft voice, collecting eggs with reverent care. Emma took her role as big sister seriously, teaching Rose everything from how to climb trees to how to skip stones across the creek. The two girls became inseparable, their laughter a constant presence around the ranch house, filling spaces that had been silent for too long. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the wedding, Cole found Lydia in what had been Sarah's garden, kneeling in the dirt, her hands working the soil with practiced efficiency. The garden had been neglected since Sarah's death. Cole hadn't been able to bear tending it, but now Lydia was coaxing it back to life, planting vegetables and herbs with sure knowledge of what the land would support. "I hope you don't mind," she said, looking up as he approached. "I know this was Sarah's place, and if you'd rather I didn't—" "Sarah would be glad," Cole interrupted, settling onto the ground beside her. "She always said a garden needed love to thrive, and she'd hate seeing it go to waste. Besides, it's your garden now, your home." Lydia sat back on her heels, dirt smudging her cheek. "I want to talk to you about that, about Sarah, about making sure Emma remembers her mother, honors her memory. I'm not trying to replace her. I could never do that. But I want Emma to know it's okay to love us both." "Have you talked to Emma about this?" "Not directly. But I've noticed she sometimes hesitates before calling me by name, like she's not sure what to call me. And I've seen her looking at the picture of Sarah in your room with such longing." Lydia's voice was gentle but concerned. "I don't want her to feel like loving me means being disloyal to her mother." Cole was quiet for a moment, thinking about the conversation he'd had with Emma on the porch weeks ago, about how Sarah had told her that love wasn't limited. "Let me talk to her," he said finally. "But Lydia, you're not a replacement. You're something new, something we needed. Emma knows that. We all do." That evening, after supper, Cole asked Emma to walk with him to the creek. They settled on a flat rock that overlooked the water, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Emma, I want to talk to you about your mama, about how you're feeling with Lydia and Rose here now." Emma picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water, watching the ripples spread. "I'm happy, Papa. Happier than I've been since Mama died." "Is that wrong?" "Wrong? Why would it be wrong?" "Because I feel like I'm forgetting Mama, like by loving Lydia and Rose, I'm somehow betraying her memory." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "I still miss Mama every single day. I miss her laugh and her songs and the way she used to braid my hair. But sometimes whole hours go by now where I don't think about her because I'm busy with Rose or learning something from Lydia, and then I feel guilty." Cole pulled his daughter close. "Your mama told me something once when we first found out she was sick. She said she wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of being forgotten. I told her that could never happen, that we'd carry her with us always. And we do, Emma. Every time you climb that oak tree she loved, every time you're kind to someone who needs help, every time you laugh, you're honoring her memory. But what about Lydia? Is it okay to love her too? Your mama would want you to. She told me once that if anything happened to her, she hoped I'd find someone else to love, because love wasn't something that diminished by being shared. It grew." Cole turned Emma to face him. "Loving Lydia doesn't mean you love your mama less. Your heart is big enough for both of them, and your mama would be so proud of the young woman you're becoming, of how you've welcomed Rose and Lydia into our family. Do you think Mama can see us, wherever she is?" "I hope so. And if she can, I think she's smiling, because we're not just surviving anymore, Emma. We're living again, and that's what she always wanted for us." Emma threw her arms around Cole's neck and held on tight. "I love you, Papa, and I love Lydia, too. Is it okay if I start calling her that? Lydia? Or would she want me to call her something else?" "Why don't you ask her? I think she'd like that conversation." The next morning, Emma approached Lydia as she was hanging laundry, her expression serious. "Can I talk to you about something?" "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Emma helped fold a sheet, clearly gathering her courage. I wanted to ask what I should call you. You're married to Papa now, which makes you my stepmother, I guess. But that feels too formal, and I can't call you Mama because I already had a mama and she died, and I still miss her. Lydia set down the laundry and knelt to Emma's level. Emma, you can call me whatever feels right to you. Lydia is fine. Or if someday you want to call me something else, that's fine too. There's no rush, no pressure. And you're right, you had a mama, and she loved you very much. I'm not trying to replace her. But you're still important to me, Emma said earnestly. You've taught me things and made Papa smile again and helped Rose heal. You're part of our family now. And you're part of mine. You and your Papa gave Rose and me something we thought we'd never have. A real home, safety, love. I thank God every day for that storm that brought us to your door. Emma thought for a moment, then said, What if I called you Lydia most of the time, but sometimes, when it feels right, maybe something else? Would that be okay? That would be more than okay. And Emma? Your mama raised an incredible daughter. I see her in you every day, in your kindness, your courage, your big heart. I hope I can be half the mother to you and Rose that she was to you. You already are, Emma said simply, and hugged Lydia tight. As spring deepened into early summer, the ranch flourished in ways both physical and emotional. The cattle fattened on good grass, the garden produced abundantly, and the house rang with life. Cole and Lydia worked side by side every day, their partnership extending beyond the house into every aspect of ranch management. She had instincts about the land and animals that proved invaluable, and Cole found himself consulting her on decisions he'd once made alone. What do you think about moving the herd to the north pasture next week? He asked one evening as they reviewed the ranch accounts together. I'd wait another week, Lydia said, studying the map of the property. The grass isn't quite ready up there yet. Give it time to strengthen, then move them. We'll get better weight gain that way. You're probably right. Cole made a note. You know, I spent years running this ranch alone, convinced I had to figure everything out myself. It's nice to have a partner. It's nice to be valued as one. Lydia looked up from the ledger. Harlan never wanted my opinion on anything. He said women didn't have the brains for business. I knew more about ranching than he ever did, but he wouldn't listen. His loss. And our gain. Cole reached across the table and took her hand. Have I told you today that I love you? Only 3 times. You're slipping. Then let me remedy that. I love you, Lydia Harding. I love your strength, your wisdom, your laugh, the way you sing when you think no one's listening. I love how you are with the girls, how you've made this house a home again. I love... Papa! Lydia! Come quick! Rose's urgent shout from outside interrupted the moment. They rushed to the door to find both girls in the yard, pointing toward the barn. Belle is having her foal, Emma called. It's happening right now. They all hurried to the barn where the mare was indeed in labor, her sides heaving with contractions. Cole had been expecting this for days, but the timing was perfect, early evening, when they were all home, when the girls could witness the miracle of birth. Stay back and stay quiet, Cole instructed softly. Let Belle do what she needs to do. They watched in hushed reverence as nature took its course. The foal arrived in a rush of fluid and limbs, and Belle immediately began cleaning her baby with gentle efficiency. Within minutes, the foal was struggling to stand on impossibly long, wobbly legs. It's so beautiful, Rose whispered, her eyes huge with wonder. Is it a boy or a girl? Give her a minute to get steady, then we'll check, Cole said. When the foal finally stood, still shaky but determined, he moved closer to examine it. It's a filly, a girl. Can we name her? Emma asked. I think that's only fair since you two spotted her first. The girls conferred in excited whispers. Then Rose announced, Hope. We want to name her Hope. The adults exchanged glances, both understanding the deeper meaning behind the choice. This foal represented new life, new beginnings, the future they were building together. Hope was exactly the right name. Hope it is, Lydia said, her voice thick with emotion. They stayed in the barn for another hour, watching Belle and Hope bond, making sure both were healthy and strong. When they finally returned to the house, the girls were exhausted but too excited to sleep. Lydia made hot cocoa and they sat around the kitchen table reliving every moment of the birth, the girls' faces glowing in the lamplight. "This is what I always wanted," Lydia said later, after the girls had finally gone to bed. She stood at the window, looking out at the barn where Hope was spending her first night. "A home where my daughter could see miracles instead of violence, where she could grow up knowing what real love looks like." Cole came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "And what does real love look like?" Like this. Like a man who takes in strangers because it's the right thing to do. Like a girl who shares her father because there's room in her heart for a sister. Like a community that rallies around people in trouble. Like choosing each other, every single day, even when it's hard. "It hasn't been hard," Cole said. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I've ever done." "Give it time," Lydia teased, turning in his arms. "Wait until I burn dinner, or accidentally let the chickens loose, or disagree with one of your stubborn rancher opinions. I look forward to all of it, the good days and the hard ones, the victories and the mistakes, all of it, as long as we face it together." They stood together in the quiet house, two people who'd found each other in a storm, who'd fought for the right to love each other, who'd built a family from broken pieces. Outside, the New Mexico night spread its vast blanket of stars overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting, their marriage, their transformation from strangers to partners to lovers. The summer passed in a golden haze of work and laughter, of small triumphs and quiet joys. The ranch prospered under their joint management, the herd growing stronger, the land responding to their careful stewardship. Emma and Rose grew taller, browner from the sun, wild and free in the way children should be. The nightmares that had plagued Rose gradually faded, replaced by dreams of horses and adventures. One evening in late August, as they all sat on the porch watching the sunset, a rider appeared on the horizon. Cole tensed automatically, old instincts kicking in, but relaxed when he recognized Sheriff Dalton. "Jack?" he called as the sheriff dismounted. "Everything all right?" "Everything's fine, just thought you'd want to know. Harlan Reeves died in prison last week. Knife fight with another inmate. He's gone, Lydia. For good this time." Lydia was very still for a moment, processing this final piece of news. Cole waited, letting her feel whatever she needed to feel. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost peaceful. "I should feel something, shouldn't I? Relief or satisfaction, or maybe even sorrow. But I just feel free, like the last shadow has finally lifted." "That's exactly what you should feel," Dalton said gently. "The man caused enough pain in his life. You don't owe him any emotion in his death." After the sheriff left, declining their offer of supper, the family sat together in the gathering dusk. Rose, who'd been very quiet during the conversation, finally spoke. "Is it wrong that I'm not sad? About him dying?" "No, baby," Lydia said, pulling her daughter close. "It's not wrong to protect your heart from someone who hurt you. You don't have to feel sad for him. You can just feel glad that he can never hurt anyone ever again." "I'm glad I have Papa now instead," Rose said, looking at Cole with absolute trust. "Papa would never hurt us." "Never," Cole confirmed, his voice firm with conviction. "You're safe here, Rose. Both of you. Always." As summer turned to fall, the ranch prepared for winter with the practiced efficiency of people who knew the land's rhythms. Cole and Lydia worked together to stock the root cellar, to ensure adequate hay was stored, to winterize the buildings. The girls helped where they could, learning the cycles of ranch life, understanding that survival required preparation and hard work. One afternoon in October, as Lydia was canning the last of the garden vegetables, Martha Morrison arrived with news that made everyone stop working. "There's a family passing through town," Martha said, "heading west, caught in an early storm, and their wagon broke down. They've got 3 children, all young, and nowhere to stay. The hotel's full with railroad workers, and most folks don't have space. I know it's a lot to ask, but they can stay here," Lydia said immediately, not even looking to Cole for permission. "We have room in the barn, plenty of food. Of course they can stay." Cole smiled at his wife's instant generosity. This woman who'd been a refugee herself not so long ago, now offering shelter to others in need. "I'll ride to town with you, help them get their wagon here." The family, the Mitchells, arrived that evening, grateful and exhausted. Paul and Catherine Mitchell had 3 children under 8, and their wagon had indeed broken an axle, leaving them stranded. They'd been traveling to California, chasing promises of better land, better opportunities. Over the next 3 days, while Paul and Cole worked to repair the wagon, the two families blended together naturally. Catherine helped Lydia with cooking and cleaning, the Mitchell children played with Emma and Rose, and the house rang with even more laughter and noise. On the final evening before the Mitchells were set to continue their journey, Paul pulled Cole aside. "I can't thank you enough for this. We'd have been in real trouble without your help." "Just passing on kindness that was shown to me," Cole said. "Besides, it's what neighbors do out here. We look after each other. That's what I'm hoping to find in California. A place where people care about each other, where a man can build something for his family." Paul looked wistful. "Though I have to say, what you've got here looks pretty good. You've built a real home, Cole, a real family." "I have. Though I can't take all the credit. Most of it goes to my wife. She taught me what home really means." After the Mitchells departed the next morning, laden with extra supplies Lydia had insisted they take, the ranch felt oddly quiet. Emma and Rose moped around, missing the other children, until Lydia sat them down with a proposition. "I've been thinking," she said. "We have this big house, this successful ranch, and so much to be grateful for. What if we used it to help others? What if we became a place where people passing through could find shelter, where families in trouble could catch their breath? We could be a way station, a refuge." "Like you were for us," Emma said, understanding immediately, "when we were lost and scared." "Exactly. We can't save everyone, but we can help some people. Give them what we were given: hope, safety, a second chance." Cole listened to his wife and daughter planning how to turn their home into a beacon for others, and his heart swelled with pride. This was what Sarah would have wanted. This was what love looked like when it was lived out loud, shared with the world instead of hoarded away. "Count me in," he said. "We'll do it together." As autumn deepened and the first snows dusted the mesas, the Harding Ranch became known throughout the territory as a place of sanctuary. Travelers knew they could find shelter there, families in crisis knew they could find help, and slowly, word spread of the rancher and his wife who'd been broken themselves, and now spent their lives helping others piece themselves back together. One December evening, as the family gathered around the fireplace after supper, Rose asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Papa, will you tell us the story? About how you and Mama found each other?" Cole looked at Lydia, who nodded encouragingly, and began. "It was a stormy night, the kind where the rain came down so hard you couldn't see 3 feet in front of you. I heard something over the sound of the storm, went outside to check, and there were 2 figures struggling through the mud." He told the story simply, honestly, not hiding the fear or the danger, but emphasizing the choices they'd made, the courage it took, the love that grew from desperation into something beautiful and lasting. The girls listened raptly, even though they knew the story by heart, because it was their story too, the story of how a family was formed not by blood, but by choice. When he finished, Emma said softly, "I'm glad you heard them in the storm, Papa. I'm glad you opened the door." "So am I, sweetheart. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Lydia corrected, smiling. "The best decision was asking us to stay." "Third best," Emma interjected. "The best was loving each other." They laughed together, arguing playfully about which decision was truly best, and the sound of that laughter filled every corner of the house, chasing away any remaining shadows. Later, after the girls were in bed, Cole and Lydia stood on the porch, wrapped in a thick blanket against the cold, watching snow fall softly across the ranch. "Do you ever think about that night?" Lydia asked. "About how different things could have been if you'd turned us away?" "Sometimes. But then I remember what you said once, that we found each other because we were meant to, that the storm brought us together for a reason. Do you believe that? In fate? In meant to be?" Cole thought about it carefully. "I believe in choice. I believe you chose to keep running when you could have given up. I believe I chose to open that door when I could have stayed safe inside. I believe we chose each other, every day, in 100 different ways. If that's fate, then yes, I believe in it. But I think it's more than that. I think it's courage." "Courage to hope," Lydia said softly, "even when hope seems impossible." Your daughter needs a home. My daughter wants a mother, Cole said, repeating the words he'd spoken to Lydia that day weeks ago when he'd proposed marriage. Those words changed everything. They did, because they were true and because you were brave enough to say them. You saw what we needed and offered it without hesitation. That's the kind of man you are, Cole Harding. That's why I love you. I love you too, more than I thought possible. You and Rose and Emma, you're my whole world. They stood together in the falling snow, and somewhere inside the house, the girls slept peacefully, safe and loved. The ranch around them was quiet, at rest for the winter, gathering strength for spring. And in that moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The years that followed brought the joys and sorrows common to any life. There were harsh winters and dry summers, cattle losses and good yields, illnesses weathered and celebrations enjoyed. Emma grew into a strong young woman with her mother's compassion and her father's integrity, eventually marrying a neighboring rancher's son and starting her own family. Rose bloomed into a confident girl who knew her worth, who never forgot the darkness she'd escaped, but never let it define her future. Cole and Lydia grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. They helped dozens of families through the years, offering shelter and guidance to those who needed it, paying forward the grace they'd received. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship, becoming a model of what could be achieved through partnership and hard work. But more than any material success, what they built was a legacy of love that healed wounds, that created family where blood didn't bind, that proved even the most broken people could find wholeness if they were brave enough to reach for it. On a warm summer evening, many years after that fateful storm, Cole and Lydia sat on their porch, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Emma's children chased roses through the grass, their laughter echoing across the land. The ranch looked much as it had that first night, sturdy, enduring, home. "Tell us the story, Grandpa," one of the children called. "About the storm and Grandma Lydia and Aunt Rose." And Cole did, as he had countless times before, because it was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth passing down. It was a story about courage in the face of fear, about choosing love when hate seemed easier, about building homes from broken hearts. It was the story of how, on one violent, stormy night in 1882, a rancher opened his door to strangers and found family instead. How a desperate woman took a chance on trusting again and found safety. How two little girls who needed each other became sisters not by birth, but by choice. It was the story of how home is not a place, but a choice you make, every day, to stand beside the people who matter most. How family is not defined by blood, but by who shows up when you need them. How love, real love, is built not in grand gestures, but in small moments of kindness, loyalty, and unwavering commitment. As the sun set over the New Mexico landscape, painting the mesas in shades of gold and crimson, Cole reached for Lydia's hand. She laced her fingers through his, and they sat together in the peace they'd earned, the love they'd chosen, the home they'd built from nothing but hope and courage. And under the cottonwood trees where they'd pledged their lives to each other all those years ago, where wildflowers still bloomed each spring, where future generations would gather to hear the story of how it all began, the legacy of Cole and Lydia Harding lived on. A legacy that proved no matter how dark the storm, no matter how long the night, morning always comes for those brave enough to wait for it, wise enough to open their doors to possibility, and strong enough to choose love over fear. In the end, that was what it all came down to, choosing love. And they had chosen well.